All right, which brings us to Survivor. So Circa Survivor, remember now, and we're going to have to use there's two different ways of sort of stating this. We're going to refer to it as Week 16A and Week 16B that has just gone by, which is how Circa refers to it. Remember, Week 16A being the Thursday night game and Saturday's slate of games, 16B being the Christmas quote-unquote week, which was Sunday's 3 games and Monday, last night's game. Essentially, it's weeks 17 and 18 of 20 total weeks in Circa Survivor, but let's refer to them as 16A and 16B. So going into 16A, Jeffrey, there were 14 entries left, one of whom had two of which had the Bengals still available and were eligible for a bonus. And what ended up happening was, first of all, what we didn't know is someone took the Jets on Thursday night.
Whoops.
We found that out retroactively. So that guy was out, or gal was out, right off the top. And we didn't even know about it. So we entered Saturday morning, and one guy had the Vikings. I thought both entries that had the Vikings available would have taken them. I was wrong about that. Only one did. And by virtue of Greg Joseph's 61-yard bomb, that gentleman, Mad Dog 2, or person, Mad Dog 2, got through. But what also happened that Saturday morning was that the Browns lost to the Saints, and we could throw up the graphic of what the selection counts were that morning. One person had the Browns. They lost to the Saints. The biggest or the most popular pick that morning was the Lions. 5 of the remaining 14 had the Lions. Lions got housed by the Carolina Panthers. Talk about ripping the Band-Aid off quickly. And the Titans, 3 people took the Titans, and the Titans fell by the wayside to the big bad Houston Texans, which left. So in other words, only the guy who picked the Vikings, only the person who had the Mad Dog 2 entry, were through safely, and only 3 were left pending Sunday night's game between the Raiders and the Steelers. And those 3 people had the Steelers. So if the Raiders won Saturday night? Yes. If the Raiders won Saturday night, Christmas Eve, that person, Mad Dog 2, would have won the entire pot of $6.133 million. So now remember, that result happened in the morning, and then the game with the Steelers and the Raiders was that night. And so what this started was a Twitter firestorm, right? I don't know if that's the right word, but certainly just a massive storm of people on Twitter saying, this guy's he's got to bet $1 million on the Raiders tonight. Excuse me, on the Steelers tonight. He's got to bet $3 million. He's got to bet, just throwing out cartoon numbers. And my point, Jeffrey, as we were thinking, because you actually texted me during this, and you're like, what would you do? My point was this. It's Christmas Eve. It's a Saturday. Like this notion that it's amazing how people who aren't actually involved will just throw out their theories on stuff. There was no ability, unless this person had Chrissy was joking yesterday, $1 million in cash in a safe in his house, right? However much you have cash on hand in your house, unless you have that. And by the way, you are a complete outlier if you do, in the scheme of things. Some of us who know pro bettors, maybe they have it. But generally speaking, most human beings do not have that. And as Matt Brown and I were texting, Matt Brown's like, well, I would ask as many of my poker playing buddies as possible to just give me money because poker players flush with cash. I get it. That was an option for someone who has poker playing buddies. But generally what we're talking about is these are all very specific exceptions to the rule. Most people can't come up with any kind of significant amount of cash to make a meaningful hedge in this situation. 10,000? I don't know. Maybe, right? I hope that he was able to get as much as he could get his hands on. But I guess I'm just sort of clapping back at the people like, here's what he should do. He should have $1 million. If he did do less than $1 million, he's crazy. That ain't life. And it wasn't life on Christmas Eve on Saturday. So he ends up 1 yard away from winning the whole pot. Remember, the Steelers had a 4th and 1 late down. And Kenny Pickett got the yard, I guess, because later replay showed that he might not have, but they gave it to him. Steelers end up winning. And so the gentleman, Mad Dog 2, had the Vikings and the 3 Steelers entries get through to 16B, which was Sunday and Monday. By the way, my tweet, if we could throw that in there, the 2 people who had the Bengals available, They opted to save the Bengals in pursuit of the extra $1 million bonus, instead choosing the Lions. Oh, boy. And I know the Bengals dominated the Patriots and still almost lost, so I get it. But, man, the lesson is always just go for the 6th. 7th is kind of irrelevant at that point. And so it came down to 4 people into 16B. And Mad Dog 2, the guy who was through with the Vikings, ended up taking the Dolphins against the Packers Sunday morning and was out before the other 3. At that point, he's rooting for the other 3 to lose for an official split of 4 of the whole pot. And instead, 2 people had the Bucks, Brown A1 and Jed 4. The Bucks come back after being down by 10 to the Cardinals to win that. And then the enemy within, who was the gentleman who started out with the 2 entries, he gets through easy peasy, generally speaking, with the Chargers. So it's 3 left. 3 people left. They got to chop, man. Because none of them have the double-digit favorites available. And the only difference is Brown A or Brown 01 has the Chargers available, but they've already clinched, which is like a 1.5-point favorite greater than the Lions, who are available to everybody. These 3 need to chop, in my opinion. Just chop it up. Intrinsic value is over $2 million. But here's my question for Circa. Maybe I should leave it for after the break. My question for Circa has to do with, was this enough to consider changing the Christmas part of this? I'll get into exactly what I mean by that right after the break. So now you have 3. And again, nobody has the double-digit favorites this week available to them. Again, one person of the 3 has the Chargers, who again have already clinched a playoff berth now, incrementally more of a favorite than, say, the Lions. All 3 have Jacksonville in the final week of the season. Anyway, my point is this. 2 points. 3, they ought to chop, and I get it. There's tax implication issues with the chop, and there's no formal way to do it, so they would all have to come to some kind of arrangement to do it. But here's where, like, the human brain comes into this, because you're dealing with 2 other human beings, right? If you're one of the 3, you're thinking to yourself, if I believe if you're sane about this now at this point, because the intrinsic value of each of these now is $2.044 million, $2,044,333.33. If you've learned anything about this NFL season, all of this is just a minefield. If you think this is you, and that you have gotten this far based on skill, I cannot imagine the level of delusion. But here's the thing about contests. When it's you who's gotten there, you often trick yourself into thinking it's actually you. So all it takes is one of these people to be like, nah, man, I'm just better at this than the other 2. We're going the distance. Hopefully with just 3, you can all come to some sort of agreement, but we'll see how it shakes out with these last 3. In that respect. The other question I have is for Circa. And I mean this in a friendly way because I love Derek Stevens and I love everything they do. And they have a Thanksgiving special week and they have a Christmas special week. And Thanksgiving is one thing because it's a standalone. It's early enough in the season where it's probably not going to decide it. And even if it were in some anomalous kind of year, you still have days after that till the Sunday to make decisions amongst each other, the players who are still alive. Christmas, when it falls on a weekend, this guy Mad Dog 2 couldn't have done anything meaningfully financially. And to have that sort of turnaround where he was in that position, as great as his position was, is almost, I don't want to use the word unfair, but it's almost cruel. And I don't mean they're doing anything cruel to the player. I'm just saying abstract. In the abstract, it's such a cruel position to be in for such a large financial decision when he is hamstrung to do anything. So I wonder if they would consider the Christmas element of Circa Survivor when it happens to fall on a weekend. I just think that's something that should be thrown in the suggestion box.